how excited you are by it.
This is amazing. Are we on? I
We're
didn't see a
on.
countdown. Is it a countdown?
I already did it.
Did we count down?
We're already in it. We're in it to win it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've counted down. I think we're live. Hello, Mike and Tim here. It is Friday, January 12th, my brother's birthday. Happy birthday, Brad. We'll release this on Monday, but today, bro, it is crappy weather Friday over in Nashville. We've got thunderstorms followed by single-digit temperatures.
Sounds amazing.
Yep. Yeah, and if by amazing you mean horrific, yes. Somebody emailed in and said, hey, January is the Monday of the year.
I saw that. That's good.
And I thought that was perfect. Absolutely. So, hey, we just want to say hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. We're so blessed, humbled, and surprised every week that we put these things out and that people listen to them. So, and we've got, my goodness, we've got so many emails rolling in that are encouraging about non-friend stuff, about giving stuff. I mean, it's insane how incredible our community is. Tim, I've got a couple emails that were particularly robust for our consideration this morning. Yes.
It's time for a healthy breakfast.
This one's pretty great. So I'm going to read. So I've got his permission to read this. First, thank you guys so much for the podcast.
You're welcome.
I love your discussions and wish I could be a part of the fray. Well, I have good news. You are.
Welcome.
I'm so thankful for your thoughtful, graceful, godful talks and teachings. Wow. I hope that that's true. You asked for future topics, and this one's juicy. He didn't say that. That's my commentary. Most of my Christian media consumption is pretty progressive, filled with, quote, deconstructionists, which sounds like a possible Van Damme comeback vehicle, who can't stop decrying the evils of evangelicalism and purity culture and megachurches, etc. What has begun to bother me is that we never talk about these things in their fullness. There are, to be sure, evils that have come from these religious movements that we are deconstructing, but we never seem to mention the good that at least was intended to come out of them. For example, purity culture. I know that the writer of the book, the father of the movement, has been vocal in speaking out about the harm his movement did, but that's certainly not what he intended. He was a faithful follower trying to do good in the world, and either he was wrong or his work was corrupted by humans that cannot seem to stop corrupting good things. And I hear no one voice acknowledging this. And I'm not specifically asking you guys to acknowledge it. What I want to hear is some thought, some vision casting, some doom predicting on your part for how badly this deconstruction movement could go. In 30 to 50 years, how might people have torn your work down and pointed out all of the damage it did to the kingdom of God? Boom. What a question.
I think people are already doing that.
My thinking is, if you give some thought for the wrong turns people might take on the road you're trying to pave, perhaps you can be mindful about the types of signposts you set to keep people on the straight and narrow and limit the damage done by those who will inevitably corrupt your work. I don't know. Maybe I just feel sympathy for the purity culture people. I know people for whom that movement was very helpful, and it's just getting constantly lambasted. I can feel through my headphones the cold sneer on Tim's face every time he says the words. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your efforts. Thanks for your dedication to the kingdom of God and to his people.
So if you tune into YouTube, you can actually see my cold sneer.
Bro. Yeah, you don't. I don't know. I think both of us probably have some verbal sneering going on when we talk about this. So I love when we get these emails because, first of all, they're couched so gently and graciously in encouragement and appreciation. And so thank you for all of that. That means a lot. And I love the push on your right. If we're not careful, we are among so many voices that are just pointing out all the ills. And part of the reason for that is that those are the ills that have negatively affected us. What we don't acknowledge, to your point, is all of the ways that evangelical culture nurtured us to this point and somehow and in some way made room for us to become these kinds of people where we ourselves kind of wrestle with what the Bible actually says versus some of the cultural stuff we inherited. So granted there, I love the purity culture example as an example that we get to play with. So let's talk first about purity culture, about what it intended, about what happened, and then deal with the second question is, well, how would people deconstruct us? Where are we harming evangelicalism? Because certainly, when books like I Kissed Dating Goodbye were being written, the goal wasn't to harm anybody, right? When evangelical culture in the 90s was, at its zenith with Christian music and rock, and the goal wasn't to harm anybody. Or the megachurch, the megachurches that I was a part of and led, certainly the goal wasn't to harm people, nor is our goal to harm people. So, man, just so much juicy stuff in there. Tim, first shot, what do you think?
Oh, this is all. So I didn't see these emails beforehand. So this is all very unrehearsed off the top of my head.
Well, I didn't study them either. Just for the record,
I know you were sitting there with your glasses on, writing
pondering
notes. Yeah, pondering ponders,
no,
deep thoughts with.
No,
Mike.
I like getting our like fresh takes on these, not our rehearsed. Because
I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. We were on a hike and we were talking about something else that was akin to purity culture, and then we kind of drifted into purity culture and Josh, right? Josh Harris, was that his name?
Yeah. Yep.
Because I was a youth pastor when that book came out, and all the parents wanted me to. It was like very important. None of them had read it, but they all wanted me to make sure that we were pushing that. So I read it, and then told them that we would not be doing that. I don't think Josh was being malicious. I think he was super young and super naive, and was surrounded by a bunch of people who told him kind of what. I mean, if you can go back and watch some of those, actually, if you watch the documentary that he put out, kind of picking it apart, you can see him on TBN and those things. And even the TBN people, I don't think that they are necessarily, I can't say either way. I don't think that they're necessarily trying to harm people like you said. However, they're so misaligned that I think they are harming a lot of people. I think that's why we have cliches like the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right.
They're looking to make money, and the purity movement became a huge money-making thing. So whether or not people are acknowledging that they're in a business that is making money or not, they are, and that is part of the intent. And I don't personally know anybody who was, and I'm sure I have friends who listen to this who will say, me, I was, but I can't think of anyone off the top of my head that went through purity culture that is not carrying a ton of baggage from that. So I don't know. And we've had these conversations where we're trying to figure out, like, as we raise our children, I do think there are tenets and pieces of why you wait. It's not any of the reasons that I was given. I think there are healthy, emotional, and physical and different things that come alongside of that, but it's not shame or fear or any of that kind of stuff that was drilled into our heads that we all carried into our marriages. So I don't know. I have a hard time with the acknowledge the good merits because that time period I've just seen ravage people. And so I don't know. I don't mean to sneer or be overly negative, but I'm sneering a little bit, and I realize this is negative.
Well, Tim, listen, I just love that it's just being brought up. So our like authentic reactions. So it seemed important to acknowledge that none of this was trying to be harmful. And the reason I think this emailer makes that point is because he wants to say to us, well, won't any of the stuff that you're a part of have the same thing happen to it? And your guys aren't trying to harm people. So let's grant that Yes. I mean, as part of the evangelical marketing machine, the Christian industrial complex, as our friend Sky calls it, the stuff gets corrupted just being a part of that. And let's acknowledge a evangelical industrial complex that platforms people who have jack squat to say on things, but for some reason have big platforms.
Yeah.
So I mean, if somebody's going to write a book on suffering and they're in their 20s, unless they have personally suffered, I'm not interested.
Right.
If somebody's going to write a book on parenting when their kids are 8 and 10 and they haven't lived through teenage years or the turbulent waters of young, adults moving out of the house, I'm really not interested in what they have to say.
Right.
If someone hasn't walked with Jesus for 30 or 40 years and that hasn't always been pretty, I'm not interested in a devotional book. And so I've become greatly skeptical of the fodder that gets forced down our throats from people that have big platforms, but don't really have the lived experience sitting behind that.
Right.
So I think one very huge mistake in purity culture was the advocates for it were almost exclusively, not almost, there were some women advocating for it, but the big guns were all white men with a certain theological persuasion. And they platformed somebody who just not lived through the vicissitudes of life enough to know and to be able to say for certain whether or not dating was actually a good thing in its American forms or not. So I've just grown skeptical of so much of the stuff, unless it's written by people who have advanced degrees. And I don't mean to just punt this to expertise, but I trust a therapist's take on some of these things more than I would just like my own take or a pastor's take on this. Unless they walk with a limp. I'm just not prepared to grant. And I didn't have that sort of discernment when we were doing, vocational ministry in the 90s. And so, whatever the latest thing was, I mean, the big thing for my wife and I was growing kids God's way. That we were in a church full of young families. And so everyone was like, yes, this is the thing to do. You put the kids on schedules, cry themselves to sleep. You don't let them sleep in your own bed. You don't It was a whole big thing. And we had a class at our church that was taught by people who advocated spanking, spoil the rod, or spare the rod, spoil the child was the mantra. Right. I think that stuff is jacked up. Now, there was no intent to harm. To me, that's not the issue. The issue is what's the fruit of these sorts of movements. Because purity, the heart of purity culture was to say, hey, God wants sexual integrity. God desires sexual fidelity. There's a telos to sexuality that culture doesn't recognize beyond just self-fulfillment and pleasure.
Right.
And we'd still agree with that. But the way in which that got wrapped into a gospel that didn't quite honor the full humanness of us or the sexuality of us or the kingdom of us, I think we're right to point all of that out, to say, hey, there was some bad fruit. If his point is only acknowledge that there was some good, I'm sure there was. I didn't experience much of it. I'm actually in therapy working on some of the things that I taught myself,
right.
And was taught about sexuality. And then I'm living in the intersection of children who have because they're not raised in purity culture, they don't see virginity as like the end all be all. They see faithfulness or fidelity as the end all be all. And so, man, so point one, if there was good that came, I'm sure there was, because God uses everything. Great. Let's acknowledge that. And certainly let's acknowledge that nobody was trying to harm anybody beyond just making a profit. No one was trying to set up, Josh wasn't trying to set up people for sexual issues down the road or whatever.
Right.
He was trying to alleviate that. Let's also acknowledge that we're wrong. The problem is we have no way, I don't know if it was Willard who said this, but I heard it in the context of him where it was like, hey, I know I'm wrong about 20% of the things that I say, but I don't know what 20% I'm wrong about. And I think for us, we're much higher.
Well, He is due Willie, so
He is, dude. He's like the fifth like gospel writer. Um, so
he's the fifth
so
Beatle, the fifth gospel writer.
so what do you think? And we can look at our work specifically, or the whole deconstructionist movement, or whatever. Like this is some of the stuff I've heard about the work I do from people that have concerns. A, it's not clear enough on sexual ethics. Because we want to make room for people who disagree on sexual ethics, we're not clear enough on what our view is and what we think the scripture teaches and all of those sorts of things. And I've had younger leaders say this. Listen, you're fogging people up here by allowing it to be an area where people can disagree with each other. So that's something I've heard personally. Another thing I've heard personally is that we're way too friendly with the idea of deconstruction itself. That, but that's, people have said this, and I'm not, and these are some people that I respect and trust who say, man, by giving so much permission to this, are we normalizing unbelief? Are we normalizing, hey, just because there's a bunch of disagreement, we can't really know? So is our epistemology off a little bit? So I think I've heard that. I think I've heard that I overemphasize the gospel of here and now and not the now and not yet, to which my response is, well, yeah, I'm doing that in correction. But maybe future generations will develop a more robust, second coming. I think I hear that we're too negative. We spend too much time critiquing whether it's dispensationalism or megachurch environments or whatever. So the focus is too negative. It's not positive.
If only people knew how much you were keeping us like into the positive.
No, but those are, I'm open to all of that, right? Because the last thing I want is to help people turn away from Jesus. But I want people to turn away from Jesus if the Jesus they've turned to is an ugly Jesus.
That's the thing.
You know what I mean?
Like I'm not worried about, I don't care if I am proven wrong. If I say something and it's brought to my attention that I'm incorrect, then I will change. I'll be like, okay, thank you. Like,
which has happened a lot, by the way.
Yeah. And I'm more interested in truth than I am in being right. So
I'm not
worried, but I'm not worried about future generations looking back. I'm sure that'll happen. That's part of the human story. And I don't think that we are doing anything that preaches like this is absolute in a really destructive way. But I'm weary of anything that is like a title or a platitude that has no roots. And so purity culture was kind of that. It was like remain pure, but there wasn't a lot of talking about the stuff that you just kind of went through with like sexual ethics and agency and all these different things in there that were not a part of the conversation. And so, but it was important to hold the title of pure.
Yeah.
And I see that in politics too, with like, I remember having conversations about George Bush Jr., and it came down to an argument of like, well, aren't you just glad that we have a Christian in office? And I was like, not if he's, no, I don't care. Like, I want somebody who's like working on behalf of people and trying to help humanity out. And if they're not doing that, then they're actually kind of tarnishing the name of Jesus. So no, I don't. So I'm not interested in titles and platitudes. And I think that part of what quote unquote deconstruction is asking those hard questions of things that we were just holding lightly, or that we didn't know the full volume or merit of. Uncritically. That's better.
Yeah.
So again, I'll hammer it all day. I hammer it in my classrooms too. Like I am a really huge advocate of critical thinking and asking hard questions and knowing why you think what you think. And if people aren't doing that, then you're holding you're standing on thin ice, and you're holding something that's volatile or not, but you don't know what it is. And so it's like, Yeah, are we gonna get picked apart? Probably. Am I worried about it? Not really. If people are
Uh,
thinking critically and trying to figure out the truth, and we can help give some tools for that, that's great. Like I tell my students, like I don't care where you land on a topic. I just want you to know why.
See, now, okay, you're hitting something that is the core of our approach to this whole thing. We don't, I don't know. I'm going to say this, and I don't know if I mean it,
I like it
but I
already.
think I mean it. Right, perfect. Yeah, what's new?
That's our mission statement, I think.
But I think I'm less interested in the individual beliefs of our listeners.
Yeah.
And I'm more interested in the kind of environment those beliefs are generated from within.
Mm-hmm.
So a certain view of God, a certain view of faith, a certain view of salvation lends itself to the kinds of believings that I hope are generous and warm and hospitable and forgiving and compassionate, versus the kind of believing. So I can believe in the Trinity and the uniqueness of Jesus, but I can believe that in a way that is warm and open and generous.
Mm-hmm.
And I can also believe that in a way that's closed and judgmental and condemning.
Yeah.
And so I think what I hear you saying and articulating, and I'm really resonating with it, is if we're wrong in our individual believings, that's okay. But I think where we are adding value, like to the world's conversation, is in how we arrive at those particular believings, the kind of conversation, the kind of community, the kind of mutual hospitality, the kind of curiosity that allows us to have deep convictions. We want deep convictions,
Yeah.
but to carry those into the world in a way that generates love and kindness and compassion, rather than generates more hostility and more polarization.
Right. Because how many scriptures are just like, hey, if you do this, but you don't have love, you're a banging gong or whatever. It's just the emptiness of platitudes that aren't
Yeah.
filled with actual like conviction. Plus, I have a feeling that when we all die and we come face to face with Jesus, we're all going to be like,
Yeah.
okay.
We're all idiots.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So first of all, dear questioner, that's a genius question. And I'm going to chew on that. That's so great. And yes, of course, future generations. I think about my kids all the time, of how they will have to deconstruct our approach to politics. Were we too political? Were we not political enough? Were we like social media? Like, did we just allow technology to run rampant? We were all like lame parents because we just were like, oh yeah, here we go. Like without any critical thinking about these things. So yes,
that's where
I think about that all the time.
National park. I think the reason the national park metaphor has held sway for so long now is that everything you just said about curiosity, like the generosity and all that kind of fostering that kind of stuff, that's not gift shop stuff. That is being out in the park with other people. And there's so much of that curiosity and helping each other out and all of it, right?
Yep.
And there's a little bit of danger to it and that kind of stuff too. But so I think that is helpful for me when I think about all these different things of like, if you take purity culture, for example, and it is just a platitude or just this like title or whatever, if you think about that in regards to going out to the park and climbing big rocks or whatever, if you're doing it without any wherewithal and just a title, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah. I think this movement, this deconstructionist movement, I've said it before. I believe it to be true. I could be dead wrong, but I think it is a movement of rediscipleship, and it's a movement of Jesus. I think Jesus is in the process of exposing the evangelical idolatry in politics, in celebrity, in capitalism, in sexual sin. I just think all of this is being exposed. And of course, people will have questions about this, as they should. And so I actually am not discouraged or doom scrolled at all about where this goes. I actually think this will result in a much thinner, trimmer, deeper church. And you see across the world where these sorts of churches are the most vibrant. Mm-hmm. When culture either is no longer neutral or openly opposed to the teachings of Jesus, then I don't know, the church actually becomes the church. So I don't think it's a bad thing that all of this is going on. Anyway, one more question. Speaking of the national park metaphor, all right, this individual brings it up. So he says some very nice things about the last couple of episodes about new creation and then the lake of fire. And he said, this episode and the previous one on the lake of fire were so helpful, but in a strange way, this kind of eye-opening can almost make one feel somewhat alone. My wife and I were discussing how difficult or near impossible it would be to share this interpretation with some of our Christian friends and family for fear of being labeled heretics or universalists. Then, of course, there's the question of how to try to convey this to our children in a way that is approachable. My sense is that you, Mike and Tim, and Seth is included on this. Seth is at school right now, so we'll have to wait on his insights. But they would probably revolve along the lines of Chick-fil-A. I wanted to say that since you wrestle with the same challenges and issues, I wanted to thank you, but also for what it's worth, here are a few questions I'm left struggling with. Number one, how do we gently invite others out of the gift shop and into the national park? Two, ought we to be concerned about there being some truth to the universalist label? Number three, if church is the foretaste for the heaven and earth space to come, ought we be concerned with, quote, saving people in the traditional sense? Or is that just a bonus option? Number four, if Jesus' command is to go and make disciples, do we have to get all those folks saved? Should that look any different? Bro. And I'm saying bro a lot because my son has been home and we just bro each other. I'm typically not a broer, but we just bro. He'll just be like, he'll text me and he's like, bro. And I'll be like, bro? He's like, bro. And then we have variations. We have bruh, bruv, brah. Yeah. So all over the place. All right. So let's do some quick hitters, Timothy. How do we gently invite others out of the gift shop and into the national park?
That is a great question.
What do you think? I know for sure ways not to do it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about that because I think that in some parts, again, sorry to keep using this example, but in the classroom, I kind of think that's part of what my job is, and not necessarily in a spiritual sense, but in pursuing a broader understanding of things sense. I try to ask a lot of questions that provoke curiosity, and then it's like, hey, guess what? Now that you've kind of found this curiosity and this like little bit of thirst for wonder, wait till you can see what's outside. Like, so I don't just be like, hey, dum-dum, there's so much more than this. I had to be awoken to the fact that there was more, and which I'm eternally thankful for. But it wasn't out of like a guilt or shame approach. And I'm not saying that that's what people do, but I think that sometimes I have been recently made aware that I can be I can lack vulnerability and can be condescending in what I think is just processing information out loud. Oftentimes it can seem preachy, and that's not my intent. So even as I'm answering this question, I'm in the process of working through that answer personally with how to really just like cultivate curiosity so that, I don't know. I don't think dragging people out into the park is the right route. But making people aware and kind of cultivating that mystery and that wonder that is inside of, I think, of everybody. I think just a lot of culture is built to kind of suffocate curiosity and wonder. We're told what to think, what to do, not just in the church, but in culture at large. So taking a breath and being like, hey, we're built as beings of curiosity and wonder. Like just the fact that we can process thought And we're not
Yeah,
just like regimented in the way that we think. Like the fact that our brains are built to do that is a kind of a wonderful thing.
it
So I
is.
think that's how I'm trying to approach that, is that I'm really excited that there's so much more than the gift shop. The gift shop was cool and I like the sweatshirt that I got, but
And it
you
was
know,
helpful for a season.
sure. And that's, you know
Yeah.
what, on top of the national park thing, revisiting the Brueggemann orientation, disorientation, reorientation.
Hmm.
I don't know how many times I've brought that up in conversation since we kind of re-hit it.
Yeah.
But I think that's really, really helpful, that it's
Yeah.
easy to look down on orientation or even disorientation, um,
Hmm.
when in fact they're really healthy places and a natural process and a natural
That's right.
journey. So
That's right.
I think
That's
taking
right.
all, it's a big thing. It's not just like this is how you do it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, bro, I think you're right. I mean, it's all in relational postures, right?
Yeah, which is
So
all of Jesus,
gently,
right? Like,
come on. So gently invite. So you've already answered your questions. How do we gently invite? So there are some people, for whom the park or the gift shop is enough right now.
yeah,
And for us to approach them with a sense of superiority, like as much as we would hate being evangelized,
right,
we subtly become evangelists now. Well, you guys, yeah, you're Christians, but you're really missing it.
totally.
And I just want to avoid any dynamic that puts me in a situation where I'm feeling superior to somebody else in that way.
Yes,
And certainly question asker is not implying that they
right.
feel this way, but I want to avoid any dynamic where that's true. So I've learned just absolute central relational practices are these: permission to be where you're at, which includes gift shop Christianity.
Yes.
Because sometimes it's helpful. I was there and
Mm-hmm.
it was helpful. There are times when a 30-second Bible answer, man or woman answer, is enough for the problem of evil. And then there are times when disorientation hits, and that's when you can gently invite people into, well, maybe it's bigger than this. Often it will happen by itself and we don't have to force it. So one relational dynamic is I'm always seeing myself as a co-learner, and I want to give people permission to be wherever they are.
Which is why
Secondly, I
the
want to be hot.
redefining the deconstruction, like you did, as
Yes,
discipleship or or whatever. Like,
rediscipleship.
right.
Yep. Secondly, I want to be, and I'm not always successful, but I want to be someone who asks questions and is curious about other people.
Yes.
So I never just want to hear one thing and go, well, that's just they're in stage 2 or they're in orientation, and you know what I mean. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want to make room for I want to be curious and receive them as a gift. Number 3, I believe that until somebody's absolutely convinced that we're for them and we're committed to them and we're committed to be with them, that they won't receive any invitation, no matter how gentle it is, as anything other than like, I'll approve of you more if you do X, right? We want to just say, nope, I'm just here. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to create the better alternative. I want to embody, maybe that's a better word. I want to embody the better alternative. So in a world full of very quick to judge, church folk, I want to be hospitable and kind.
Yeah.
In a world where Christians have come to believe that their political action is that what they should be doing in the world, I want to really highlight and focus on the incredible ways the kingdom comes that are still and small and quiet and non-spectacular. You know what I mean? That are
Mm-hmm.
non-coercive, right? So I want to live a life that is in resistance to the gift shop
Right.
without condemning the people that are totally satisfied therein.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that the conversations that I often get in with people, this is only an issue with church people. Non-church people are fascinated by all of this stuff.
Right.
And I just love those conversations all the time. But it's the church people that are like, listen, unless you say these words, right? You've got to use the word sin and you've got to use the word Jesus and alone and all the things, then you're not really a Christian. I'm not going to sit and try to invite those people into something else because they won't receive it as invitation.
Right.
Um, I
Receive this
think,
confrontation or
or like, dude, you're a liberal. Why would you, I mean, whatever.
yeah.
So the best advice we can give to people is just to sit, to listen, to be hospitable and receptive, and to try to embody the better alternative and to focus on you in the world and not them.
Right.
Ought we be concerned about there being some truth to the universalist label? I don't think I'm a universalist, although I'd love that to be true. I think God's justice demands there's some accounting, there's some reckoning. I just am not super sure what that's going to be like. And so I don't know. If somebody called me universalist, I would say, I don't think that's a nuanced view of what I'm saying. But I don't know that I'd lose a lot of sleep over, like Tim said. I mean, I'm not sure being labeled by somebody else is, going to be a huge battle I fight.
Yeah.
I think that Christians, though, have to answer this question. If universalism is true and the fear of hell is gone and everyone's going to be saved, then why be a Christian now? If Jesus people don't have a really good answer to that question, then our whole Christianity has been built on the get out of hell free card, right? If Jesus, the only work of Jesus that matters is the work he does after I die, then man, I think we've really missed the point.
Oh man, it just opens up just a myriad.
There it is. There he is.
But think about every little thread that you just mentioned, like unties just a huge tapestry of different things. But
totally.
So I think that I fall further into that, but I'm not interested in labels at all. I'm not interested in the Christian label. I'm not interested in the evangelical label. They don't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that if they mean a lot to a lot of people, that's great. And I'm not trying to degrade that for other people. I'm just not. It's the same thing as I was saying about the purity culture label. Like, I'm interested in understanding what a healthy sexual ethic is. I'm not interested in walking around saying I'm a virgin, I'm pure, or whatever. Like the labels mean nothing to me. I think that I have.
Because you're 4, bro. You're an Enneagram 4.
That's right. So that's part
of it. Let me
just
be clear, Tim. By temperament, personality,
you can't
personal
box
experience,
me in, Mike.
Yes, exactly.
You can't label me. I'm my own man. Am I worried about being labeled a universalist?
Juice.
No.
Tim's got some extra juice on this. Absolutely.
I think that I love the idea of the hopeful universalist that, like I mentioned before, I've been praying since I was a kid that God would pull a fast one and let everybody in. And that was a prayer rooted in the fear of hell culture and everything. But the questions that ideology begs, the traditional Christian ideology begs, are too big. And who defines what? And who defines the unforgivable sins? And who defines who's in and out? And who defines who prayed the prayer correctly? And who defines X, Y, Z forever and ever and ever? And I just don't see that in what Jesus was advocating.
Yeah.
I don't think he was walking around being like, hey, you have to.
We're going to talk about this today.
I just don't see that. I definitely see like him. So, I texted you because for some reason, the book of Micah kept popping up. And I was like, okay, I kind of feel like I should read this and get into it a little bit more. And it popped up in too many things in a row to ignore it. I'm not saying it was God, but maybe it was. I don't know. But I got a commentary. I've been working through it. And it's so interesting. The most famous verse in that book is the, do justly, love mercy, walk humbly. It's a really interesting tandem of ideas together, hand in hand, right? Like, justly, mercy, humbly, and how you posture yourself within each of those before God and your community at large. And I see that in what Jesus advocates. Like, there's something to the absolute participation in the restoration of humanity that I see as a key feature of what it means to be human, and human in relation to this deity that wants to make all things new and reconcile. And so all those questions, I run through that. So does that make me a hopeful universalist? Perhaps. If you need to give me that label, I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
You
But
can't put Stafford in a corner.
that's right. Nobody puts baby in a corner.
I love it. You think there was sneering before? Can't say
It's
the
all
word
smile. There's no
label.
sneers over here.
You can't say the word label without a cold.
But I get it. Like people are afraid, like you're being told
Yeah,
that you're a heretic
yeah.
and that you don't belong to your tribe, and that what you have now found to be truth, or what you're advocating for, is going to make you burn, is going to make people burn around you. I understand that fear.
Totally. I had a yearly conference I was a part of with a big parachurch organization
Colonoscopy.
and a colonoscopy.
Spiritual colonoscopy.
That's exactly right. And I'd preached some stuff on hell, just saying, hey, I wonder if like annihilationism, which is something I've come to more fully sort of embrace.
Yeah.
But then I was just saying, hey, this seems like a legit biblical option. And so there was this one part of their big nationwide staff team that said, hey, I'm not sure. I think this guy could be a little heretical. So I get pulled onto this phone call. I'd spoken at this conference for years, and it just felt awful.
Yeah.
And I felt really misunderstood, not valued, kind of resentful towards the whole thing. So what the labels do, and the reason why sometimes I think I resent them, is that they're shortcuts. So you don't have to appreciate the nuance of somebody, either their
100%.
personality or their. And so I'm just, if somebody were to say I'm a universalist, I'd say, not in the way that you mean. I hope. I mean, if it's hopeful, dude, all day.
Yeah.
But Jesus warns against something. There's something. And there is a reckoning. There's no doubt. There has to be. In the moral logic of the Bible, there has to be. But the weight we put on the specifics is totally not justifiable to the weight the Bible puts on the specifics.
Right.
Because the Bible gives us, I think, contrary and contradictory specifics, right? Because they're talking in metaphor. Right? How can it be a place of darkness and a place of fire? I mean, just to name one of the most obvious ones. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know that you ought to be concerned with this. I understand though the reticence, but this is where I just think asking good questions sort of helps. So you're not. I mean, if I'm feeling like I have something to defend, I'm already in a situation where I'm not usually behaving in very Jesus-like ways.
100%.
Let's talk about, I mean, man, these are so good. We're 42 minutes in. We haven't even gotten to hell yet.
Don't worry, we'll all get there.
Ought we be concerned with saving people in the traditional sense? Now, I can tell you what Tim Stafford's going to say, because he is all into his forness right now. And this is what makes Tim and I so fun, because I'm much more positive. He is not.
Hey, that's all, man. That's all like a matter of a vantage point. It's all positive from where I'm looking.
Dude, so good. So good. Oh, man. So ought we, so here's what I hear Tim saying too. Hey, ought we worry about people who saving people in the opposite sense? Tim's going to say, no, not at all. Am I right?
Yeah, no, I'm not concerned with that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think it's my job. I'm not the savior, even though I may sometimes have a savior complex. Deep down, I know I'm not.
I'm more interested in forming a community of salvation, of people who have been, are being, and will be saved, than I am about calling individuals to pray a prayer. So a community of salvation to me looks different than a community of saved people.
Yeah.
Right? A community of saved people is a community of people who've crossed some line. It could be baptism, could be speaking in tongues, it could be praying a prayer in your heart. A community of salvation is a community where the liberation of Jesus, the compassion of Jesus, the conviction of Jesus, all of that is mixed together and into a really colorful soup of different people encountering Jesus at different points of their lives. So the distinction about who's saved and who's not saved is less important than the distinction of who's connected to the community and who's not connected to the community.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So the way I evaluate the kind of church I want to lead, I want to lead a church that treasures the incarnation. So it's a human community in all of its fullness. It's a respecter of humans in community.
Yes.
I want to honor the crucifixion of Jesus. So I want it to be a cruciform community. And I want it to be a community that honors the resurrection of Jesus. So it's a new creation community. That kind of community in the New Testament is a community of salvation. That is a community that proclaims the Lord's death until he comes whenever they take the bread and eat the cup. Well, drink the cup and eat the bread. Hello. So we're not eating cups, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's talk about hell for a second. These are so great. I mean, these are so great.
I am holding back so many inappropriate things.
Okay, just give us one. Just give us one.
I probably shouldn't.
I'm dying. I'm dying right now.
When you just mix that up, there's a very famous, funny quote from Three Amigos, where El Guapo mixes up some pretty gnarly phrases, but that's what popped in my head when you said.
Tim, I want this to be the kind of community where you don't hold back.
Well, I don't good all the time, but yeah.
Tim, I love you're in a rare mood today. I like this. And it's not a rare mood to me because I get to see you like this a lot.
Well, it's always just I'm trying to parse out before I speak what's helpful and what's not helpful. El Guapo may have not been helpful in that scenario, so I withheld.
All right, speaking of hell. I want to just do a quick run through of where hell fits in this in the traditional story versus in the new creation story that we've been looking at that I think Revelation tells.
Wait, you hit, like there was one thing in the questions that I don't think you hit with the
what? Go
and make disciples of all nations.
Yeah. If Jesus' command to us is to go and make disciples, do we have to get those folks saved?
What is that? So, and you guys parsed out that information prior, like the go down from here and make disciples. And what is it? What does discipleship mean? And what does community mean? And what does all that mean? That's the thing I mean with asking questions. Like that verse has been used for years to promote evangelism in not a communal sense. Like just go out and provoke prayers on the street and then walk away from those people and just, hey, at least they're in. But what does it mean to go down and make disciples, to make lifelong learners in a community of people? What does that actually look like? And I think that you kind of embodied that with what you're saying about your church. Like you're trying to cultivate a group of people that are leaning into a salvation idea and how that, and then what does that provoke out of that? And how do you as a community walk down that road together? Rather than you just getting up there and saying something provocative for 45 minutes and then just hoping that people don't ask too many questions, but
that's right. And I think, so one response is Gambus introduced me to the thought that the Great Commission was given to the disciples, not given to the church. Because it's not repeated in the church. It's not repeated in the epistles. The concern in the epistles is fidelity to Jesus, not effectiveness into culture. And so there is a form of the Great Commission given in all the Gospels. Mark ends, but in Mark's alternative ending, there's another, go into the world, handle snakes. Yeah, very interesting. But John has one, as God has sent me, so I send you. And so I used to really buy something that was called the missional church, which is, our job, like we don't have a missions department. We are a missions department, kind of thing. Like the church is on mission. And I do think that's true. I really do. But I think the mission's different than what I thought it was. Right. I think the mission is to embody faithfulness to Jesus rather than to grow in evangelistic, like prowess. So it is interesting when you read the letters of the New Testament. And I encourage you guys to do this. Like, don't take my word for it. There are invitations to make the gospel attractive to outsiders, but that's for two reasons. One, they're showing up to your meetings and they have no idea what's going on. So if you're speaking in tongues, you'd have an interpretation. But the second motive for that is because Christianity was being greatly misunderstood by culture. Right? They were called cannibals in some places because they ate the flesh and blood of a dead person. Right? They were sexually immoral in some places because they would have these extended love feasts. They were atheists because they didn't grant the validity of other gods. And so Paul will say things like, make the gospel attractive, or let your lives, do such good deeds among the pagans that they can't disparage you. So Paul had very much an interest in maintaining the reputation of the church in culture. And I have that interest too. I think that's why the church should be engaged civically and politically for the best of humanity. I do think that's part of our bearing witness to the world.
Yeah, as
But
this comes out on MLK Day.
Totally. But the primary emphasis is on the 59 one another's that are given to the church, right? To bear with, to forgive, to share each other's burdens, to exhort, to, encourage. And so it's not that the church is focused only on its insideness, but the church is focused on the kind of community it is. And it's that kind of community that witnesses well to the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that the idea of making something attractive has become bastardized, and people feel like they have to redress Jesus in a way that will be more attractive to culture. But the 59 one another's, that is, to me, that is a definition of how you are making this attractive, because you're not polishing a turd, you're highlighting the beauty and the depth of something that culture might not see. Yeah. If that makes sense. So it's not like you are you're the artist that's making it attractive. You are helping to reveal what the actual beauty is within it that maybe has become misunderstood or unseen by the people at large. And what does it look like to make that attractive? It's doing those 59 different ways of elevating one another in a community and saying, this is what it looks like this is how humans are supposed to exist together.
Yeah. And do I think other humans will gravitate towards that? Sure. And so I think all of the things about sharing your faith and inviting people, I mean, all those have a place. But when I'm just looking at the emphasis on the New Testament writings, the emphasis, like Revelation is not interested in saving the world. It's interested in those 7 churches being faithful to the Jesus they've received. Right? I mean, that's the thing that's so interesting. Now, of course, God is interested in saving the world, and he uses faithful communities to do that, among other things.
It's just, what does that mean?
Exactly. And what does it mean to make disciples, teaching everything that I've commanded you?
Yeah.
And so, and that's why the disciples took that plan and planted churches. The result of that command are the churches that blossomed into us 2,000 years later. It wasn't a bunch of discipleship communities where all we're doing is reproducing evangelists.
Right.
The result of the Great Commission was that churches were planted and then written to be faithful. So we're an hour in. We're just getting to hell.
Solid questions.
Bro, seriously, if you guys want less of this, then stop asking such good questions. So the earliest gospel that I internalized was this one. There is a place called heaven where God lives, and there's a place called hell where the devil lives. And you go through life once, and you choose whether to believe in Jesus or whether to not believe in Jesus. And if you believe in Jesus, Jesus pays the price for your sin. He takes sin, your punishment, upon himself, so that when you die, yes, you're judged, but the judgment results in heaven, the disembodied place up in the sky. If you do not know Jesus, and you trust in your meritorious good works, then you will be sorely disappointed when you're judged, because you will be doomed to hell, this underground torture chamber where you will be tormented for an eternity. And And if people hadn't really heard of Jesus, then they probably wouldn't have responded. And so there's all sorts of logic sort of attached to that. But the main purpose, and I saw this on the back of a semi truck on the freeway, it's just like one road that diverges at death. You either go to heaven forever, or you go to hell forever. And that's the point of the Bible. That's the gospel. And so we have worked so freaking hard for over 8 years to try to say, when you read the Bible in its context, you get a different story. Yes, what you believe matters, and yes, how you live matters. But the Bible isn't the story of two competing realms called heaven and hell. The Bible is the story of two realms that were initially united and joined together, but were split and will be rejoined in the future. Heaven and earth. So the Bible is not the story about heaven and hell. The Bible is the story about heaven and earth. And this, friends, is the biggest implication of all of the things we've been talking about. That the preaching of the apostles in the book of Acts, read it for yourself, don't take my word for it. It talks about God's judgment, because God's judgment to reunite heaven and earth, there is judgment. No question. There's a reckoning, and there has to be. There has to be. But not once is anyone threatened with eternal torment. Not once in the evangelistic preaching in the book of Acts. It's fascinating. Read it for yourself. The fear of hell was never a motive that the apostles used to get people to believe in Jesus, particularly when they're preaching to Jews. Now, when Paul goes and preaches to the Romans, he does talk about a day of judgment. He does say, God commands all nations everywhere now to repent, because now what was unknown to you, I'm proclaiming. So you have a decision to make. But nowhere does he say, if you don't make that, you will go to the eternal torture chamber, for the rest of your life to be eternally tormented. And so the biggest, most irksome, frustrating part of my evangelical heritage is the overemphasis on hell and the attendant proclamation of fear as a motive for following Christ. And I do think that harms people, and I think that itself is harmful. So you talk about things that I'm happy to deconstruct. I'm really happy about this one.
Yeah.
The amount of harm that's been done is I don't know, nauseating. And
to what
so,
end?
yeah, well, if your whole thing is getting people off a sinking ship and getting their souls into heaven, and what that means is that they confess with their lips that Jesus is Lord and believe in their hearts that God raised him from the dead, then if you'd use any means whatsoever, right? I mean, if you get a cancer diagnosis, Tim, bro, you need the freaking remedy, and you better wake up, not live in denial. So we want to shake people out of denial by recognizing there's an eternal judgment waiting for them. Their life and their believing matters, right? You can see the logic in it.
Kind of, yeah. It's very like, I don't know. Yeah. It feels very anti-discipleship to me.
Well, yes. And that's our friend Dallas Willard.
D. Willie
said, for years, Americans have preached or evangelicals have preached a gospel that only is concerned with sin management and getting into heaven, and does not naturally lead into the very command that Jesus gave his disciples to preach, was teach them to obey everything I've taught you.
Yeah.
Why would I obey Jesus if my sin problem in terms of heaven is taken care of? Like,
right.
If you take away hell and you say, hey, everyone's going to be saved. Everybody is going to be saved. Now, for some, there'll be a little more payment than others, right? We'd all agree that's fair.
Yeah.
But everyone at the end is going to live eternally with God. Then the question is, why would you follow Jesus now?
Right.
And if Christians can't answer that question with anything remotely compelling, then the whole system is built on a stack of beef and cheese, just like Santa. So
Is that a saying?
I don't know.
It is now.
Tim Stafford on fire. We gotta, bro. I'm not even into the material yet. All right, this thing, and we've got an interview that we've got to do in like 20 minutes for next week's episode.
Oh,
So we're not even going to get close to this. So the traditional story was that story, and of course, when I'm 9 years old or 12 years old, and somebody says, "Hey, do you want to pray to accept Jesus in your heart?" You're like, "Damn right," literally, right? Better than damn wrong. And so, yes, of
or damn
course,
left.
of course. And then the fear comes. Well, what if I didn't mean it?
Oh,
And
yeah.
preachers would pray on that. If you've backslidden, and then that's why sin management matters, because if you're living in sin, you could lose that sucker. And you need to rededicate your life to Jesus. And in some ways, that's not entirely a bad thing. But the
It's
whole
called
root
repentance.
of it, exactly. Yes. And that is to be a way of life.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, it's exactly what you said. When you learned that about yourself, about sometimes, and I don't experience you this way, but I can see where as you're processing, you get into the feels, baby.
Yeah.
And people could hear that as condescending. Even just feeling like sorry and becoming aware and wanting to change that, like that, there it is. That's rededicating your life to Jesus, right? I mean, right there. So we've been trying to suggest that Revelation tells a different story, and Revelation tells a story that's congruent with the rest of the Bible, namely that at the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth and the humans as image bearers. There was some sort of rupture, right? That the humans now live outside of Eden and they encounter other humans. And there, sin is at work, right? Sin is now after Cain. And then there's violence that we'd never encountered in the garden, right? Lamech is like, dude, somebody messes with Cain, it's 7 times vengeance. For me, it's 77, man. And so we encounter spiritual beings that are in rebellion and collaborating with the human rebellion so that violence literally covers the face of the earth. I mean, so there's some sort of rupture that's happened, and God's space, heaven, the heaven space, up as a spatial metaphor is now associated with a place where God's will is done, but here, down, it's associated with other wills being done. And so the question becomes not how is God going to get everyone out of here, but how is God going to reclaim Israel, but more importantly, creation as its rightful owner? That's how the Old Testament ends. Yes. So Jesus shows up preaching, repent. The kingdom of the heavens, or the kingdom of God, is now back. I'm bringing heaven back. Justin Timberlake. And so Jesus proclaims this, and as the overlap of heaven and earth space, he creates little pockets of, like, wherever he goes. He's just, why could he do all this? Because he's the temple space. He's the heaven and earth space, right? It's beautiful. It's majestic. And that's the thing that's so fascinating is the heaven and earth space didn't stay confined behind a curtain where you had to do all these rituals, just to approach God one day a year if you're the high priest. Now the heaven and earth space was wandering into dinner parties where prostitutes and tax collectors had gathered.
Right.
Now the heaven and earth space was wandering around where demon-possessed people who were living in graveyards next to flocks of pigs. I don't know if a pig is a flock or not, but tons of pigs. The most radioactively unclean space in the history of Jewish thought.
Right.
And he's just like... I mean, you can't combine it. Dead, demon-possessed, and pigs.
Right.
And he just sort of shows up and is like, oh, hey, what's up? Right? Just verbally cast. I mean, that's what's so compelling about Jesus is that the heaven and earth space didn't stay hidden behind a bunch of ritual. Now, that ritual was all illustrative to Israel for their covenant. So it mattered and was important. It wasn't just a waste of a legalistic God. But something different happened in Jesus, where all of a sudden now, because he is the priest, the sacrifice, and the temple all at once, dealing with him is dealing with Yahweh. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. How can you ask about the way to the Father? Have you not been with me? He said to Thomas, right? I mean, it's just incredible. So that's my favorite part of this whole story, is that Jesus tabernacles among us. And in his tabernacling, he's just sort of floating around in the regular, mundane, lustful, prideful, money hungry, right, view of human nature. And that's the heaven and earth space. It just blows my mind. And so Jesus himself talks about the fact that he's doing two things at once. On the one hand, he is delivering the earth and creation and the human image bearers from the strong man, right? He's plundering the strong man's kingdom. So anytime he's healing or exorcising demons or forgiving, he's taking what the strong man has, sort of plundered that is rightfully God's and moving it back into God's rightful ownership. And he's also talking about some future day when the undoing of this will be in its fullness accomplished. Right? So he leaves saying, heaven and earth, all authority has now been given to me. Satan can't offer anyone else the kingdoms of the earth because I actually have them now. And the age of sin and death is still afoot, right? Not everyone has risen from the dead. The graves still hold everybody except me and like a few randos in Matthew. The Spirit of God is being poured out, yes, which is a sure sign of the age to come, but it's being poured out in the middle of the age of sin and death, the present age of sin and death, when Rome and all of the evil still held sway, seemingly. So, of course, the New Testament writers take Jesus' words and look to a future day, the renewal of all things, reconciliation of all things, the restoration of all things, or in the words of Isaiah, new heavens, new earth. When we get to the new heavens, new earth, this is all review. When we get to the new heavens, new earth passages, it's the rejoining. Yeah. It's coming down from heaven to earth, right? It's the rejoining of Genesis 1 and 2. It's just incredible. And now it's a wedding banquet. Like, it's a celebration. Before, it was what was normal. So there was no wedding banquet because Adam and Eve just were like, well, yeah, this is the normal space. Yeah. Right? Naked, cool, living with God and spiritual beings. Yeah, that's just Tuesday. But when this gets rejoined, the whole universe is gonna go crazy. So love that image. Now, where does hell fit? And we have exactly 10 minutes to begin this answer before we go. After we're interviewing Michael Ware on his book, The Spirit of Politics. So it's going to be next episode, actually. So, but we're going to record it on today, which is amazing. We're we live timeless lives. That's right. Tim and I do. So I don't know how far to get into this, Timothy. So all right, let me say this. There's so much to say, and I spent so much time prepping this.
Well, doggone it. Do you want to save it? Because hell's kind of an important
piece. But let's just say this. In the scripture, hell is the word that's used for all of the things that when heaven and earth are rejoined don't fit, don't align, right? All of the beings, the sin. I mean, the picture of like the lake of fire, even death and Hades itself are thrown into the lake of fire. So it's like everything associated with this present evil age is held, right? Helled, right? It's held. And so hell becomes a shorthand word, not for a place of torture, but for a place where everything that does not fit into new creation, where that is. Now, I argue that what happens is that's a place of destruction. Other people say, nope, that's a place of eternal torture and God's judgment, and I totally disagree. That's fine. But we have to reckon with the fact that Jesus uses this word
There is
a
something
bunch.
that happens.
That it's something. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly right. So hell is two things in the New Testament. It's a present power and it's a place of containment. So James has this really interesting line. He's talking about the power of the tongue to do harm in the world. We'd all agree with that. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. Ooh, that's interesting. So the tongue presently, so he's using all sorts of metaphors for the significance of speech, right? With it, we praise God, and with it, we curse others. Like, what does salt water and fresh water have to do with each other? They don't fit. Or he uses like a bridle, like on a horse. It's a small bit, but it controls a very large animal. Or to your body, it's a tiny part of the body, but it sets the whole body on fire. And then this line is itself set on fire by hell. So hell evidently is one of the ways to use the word hell is to describe the evil that human beings unleash on each other. And we would all say, yeah, hell's a great word to describe that.
Yeah, it's just not
Right.
always a noun.
Right. It's a power. Like when we look at sex trafficking or and we say, hey, that's from the pit of hell. Like in a way, we're speaking truthfully. That is set on fire by the idolatry, the injustice, the all of the awfulness that characterizes the location we're going to talk about in a second. You know what I mean? So it's a power. But the way Jesus uses it, primarily, it's a place. And many of us have heard this, but when he uses the word hell, it's the word Gehenna, which is itself a reference to the valley of Gehenna or Ben Hinnom, which is right outside of Jerusalem. And that picture that hell is outside the city becomes really important because as we saw in Revelation, there is a new Jerusalem and there are people, the wicked, outside the city. So this is a consistent image from that the Old Testament uses, that Jesus picks up, and that is carried forward to Revelation to describe hell as some place of containment. So the city, Jerusalem, literally means the peace of God, the shalom. Jeru, one of the plays in the word God, shalom, the city of God. So anything outside the city is outside the peace of God, is the idea. So the Valley of Ben Hinnom in the Old Testament is a place of incredible wickedness. Like this is where, like the thing that the prophets used to condemn Israel most of all is when they sacrificed their children to the god Molech, right? And that the valley is where that happened. So in the Valley of Ben Hinnom, you've got the idea that that Israel was so wicked, they in their worship of other gods, they sacrificed their own children outside the city. Now that place, according to some medieval rabbis, and we don't know for sure, but legend has it that became a place of garbage. But that is only very late. That's in the medieval period. There's no ancient source that says the Valley of Ben Hinnom was a garbage dump in Jesus's day. So I think it would have been known as the place of idolatry, the place of immorality, and the place of God's judgment, where he judged Israel for that great atrocity. Okay? Yeah. So that's the connotation. If I say Hiroshima or Nagasaki, right? We immediately associate those images have power beyond the geography of the location on the map, right? You can go there today, but they also stand for the incredible power that humans can unleash on each other. Yeah. Now, I think the Valley of Ben Hinnom has a similar connotation. So when he's talking about things being cast outside the city into this valley, it's things that are of that valley and fitting for that valley of injustice. So when so in the Sermon on the Mount, if you remember, he talks about Gehenna in reference to lust, in reference to religious hypocrisy, and in reference to anger.
Yeah.
And so God is so serious about getting the hell out of earth, if I can use that language, that it's not just he wants to get rid of sex trafficking, he wants to deal with lust. It's not that he wants to get rid of genocide, he wants to get rid of anger.
Yeah.
And so what Jesus does is Jesus locates the issue in the human heart. He says in Matthew, don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? But the things that come out of a person's mouth come from their heart. And these things are what defile us.
Yeah.
For out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. So the picture is this location of great injustice and immorality. There's a power there that can energize human action in lust, anger, hypocrisy, and in speech. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So we can speak in a way that is aligned with the idolatry and injustice of the Valley of Hinnom. And so that speech belongs there.
Yeah.
So my take is that these are pictures of both containment and destruction. That both fit under judgment. So the good part of God's judgment is that evil is contained and it will no longer be in his holy city. It truly will be the city of the peace of God. The bad news of the judgment is that it will be condemned and ultimately extinguished. And the metaphors of lake of fire or outside the city work with both of those messages. It's contained away from the shalom of the city, and these are images of destruction. Now, none of this answers, well, what about the person that never hears of Jesus? Or what about, do we get a second shot? I mean, when it says every knee will bow and every tongue will confess, does that actually happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
You have one verse that says, hey, we're destined to die once and then face judgment. I have no idea what that looks like. None. So anybody that starts inserting, decision trees on the basis of the Almighty really needs to not, because all we get is, hey, you've got a Lamb's Book of Life, you've got other books that record your deeds, and there you go. Be faithful.
Yeah.
But in terms of I just think the universal teaching of the Bible is that God will reach every single human heart that's open to him. Yeah. End of story. And I have no idea how, when, or why. Well, I know why, but I don't have any idea how or when. So the biblical story is not a story at all about heaven and hell. Hell isn't mentioned. It's not mentioned in the Old Testament. Now, Sheol is the realm of the dead, right? And we do get in Daniel a reference to some sort of eternal suffering, right? The righteous get raised to eternal something, and the it's in Daniel, and the wicked get raised to eternal something. So, but there isn't this big theology of the afterlife. So when Jesus comes and starts talking about hell, the biggest point is that the Valley of Ben Hinnom, the fires of that valley that burned the children of Israel alive, were lit by human hands. Right? It's not like God created a fiery hell and said, oh, you didn't buy it, so you're going. If you're going to take that metaphor and work out its implications, the implications were that place became hell because the humans made it that way. Ooh.
I
Joshua
just like
Ryan
Jesus,
Butler.
Like the woman that's caught in adultery, the way that he speaks to different people that he comes in contact with that are not religious folks, is always it's never like, hey, accept me into your heart and then good luck. It's always like, hey, here's an acknowledgement of who you are as a human. Now go and live more into something that's not destructive to you.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, so it's just so interesting how much we've perverted that into the opposite, where
Yeah.
it's like this really, I don't
Totally.
know, it's such a beautiful interaction and of leaning into a destructive tendency for somebody,
Yeah.
and invite them out of that into something so much more. And none
So
of
do
it
I
in like a weird, like
totally,
manipulative ways. Like
totally,
it's a,
totally. So do I think people will go there? Well, Jesus really hinted at the possibility. But do I think that God sends them there? Boy, I really disagree. I really disagree. That's not the point of the metaphors. The
yeah.
point of the metaphors is that the fires of hell were literally lit by human hands. Joshua Ryan Butler wrote a book called The Skeletons in God's Closet if you want just a real introductory primer to this, that's a great place to start. Tim Mackey has some stuff on this as well. And then there's some much more robust like theological treatments out there. But we've got to go, ladies and gentlemen. Somehow you've exhausted us. And Tim is on fire, not from hell.
That remains
But
to
we're
be
going to
seen.
record an interview in 10 minutes. So we got to go. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this conversation. The Voxology Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is made possible by listeners just like you. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Voxology Podcast or on Tithely, tithe.ly, search Voxology Podcast. You can interact with the hosts on Facebook /Voxology Podcast or on Instagram at Voxology Podcast and on Twitter or X, whatever it is, at Mike Erie. Thank you for walking this long road with us.